on costumes too. Hi, everybody. Welcome to SharePoint Power Hour. I'm Laura Rogers, and this is a weekly show that we do every Wednesday at 11 Central. Power Hour is all about business solutions in SharePoint, to where you can do things that don't entail actually writing code or doing any sort of hardcore server administration. But it runs a wide gamut. This is our 62nd episode, and we have a whole list of all the previous episodes with all the different topics we covered so far in YouTube. Our channel is SharePoint RAX. And I'm Laura Rogers, and we're going to go through and let everybody introduce themselves, and then we're going to go through the demonstration I'm going to be doing today is the send to option in document libraries, to be able to send a file to another location, and kind of what all that entails and different things you can do to, different settings that exist around that. For those of you who are interested in looking at upcoming future or previous recordings, when you go to our YouTube channel, it's SharePoint RAX, and then when you click the videos tab and then click the little drop down and choose events, that will show you upcoming ones. Right now there aren't any upcoming ones already in there but ahead of time, but usually they'll be in there at least a day or two ahead of time. And then, of course, under playlist, there's an entire playlist of all the power hours. So this is also very interactive. So while we're talking and while we're doing our demos, there is a little Q&A app in the Google Hangout that you can use to ask questions. So I love it when you guys are interactive with us. That's kind of the whole point of doing it live. But so if you're watching this on YouTube, you actually have a little link right on the video. It's a little yellow button that will take you over to the Google Hangout, which is where the Q&A app is. And then when you're in the Google Hangout, you've got, like, by default, I think it's going to show you just some hyperlinks that I've shared kind of on the right panel. But then you have to click, like, it's a little icon that looks like a bunch of little squares, little tiles. You have to click that to be able to flip to the other app, which is the Q&A app. And sorry, they made it, the more apps they add, the more confusing it is to be able to use the other ones. But one of you suggested we turn off the applause one, so that was kind of useless anyway, so we turned that one off, so at least it's not in the way anymore. But all right, so again, I'm Laura Rogers. I've been using SharePoint about 10 years and started off as a server admin, et cetera, et cetera. I like working with all the out-of-the-box solutions, and I'm having eye issues today, so I've got my digital eye patch on. So let's go down the row. Kevin, then Ryan, then Joelle, then Stephen, then Tanya, and I'll introduce yourselves, and then we'll get on with the demo.
Hi, I'm Kevin Hughes, SharePoint architect on the team, working out of the Kansas City office. Been working with Microsoft solutions for about 20 years, and SharePoint specifically as a platform for those solutions since 2007. My role in the team is to figure out what clients need and figure out how to come up with solutions for them to not only make it work but make them happy. So that's me.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Keller. I'm working out of the northern Colorado area. My specialty on the team is doing SharePoint branding. I've been working with SharePoint for, let's see here, about 7 or so years now, starting with the 2003 version. Moved on to the 2007, 2010, 2013, and the rest is history. I've been doing branding specifically for about 3.5 years or so now. So that's kind of my gig.
Hey guys, good afternoon. I am Joelle Farley. I am in Atlanta. I work a lot with the business solutions. I do a lot of planning and design and governance and stuff like that, and also work with workflows. And I've worked with SharePoint since SharePoint. I'm looking forward to the session today.
Stephen.
Hi, I'm Stephen Wilson. I am in the Cincinnati office. I work with mostly administrative stuff, but I also do some of the client-facing things that we do here, some of the early engagements where we help people set up SharePoint, just basic usage and knowledge about what to do next after you have SharePoint in place. And I've been working with it since around 2007, like late 2006, early 2007.
Tanya might be having audio-visual issues.
Okay.
So, all right, we'll just see. All right. Anyway, yeah, somebody in the chat room asked. Yeah, if you really need to know, I have pink eye. I have 3 children, so you know, cooties. Who knows what? he's a digital eye patch. So, because you're not going to see me while I'm doing my demo anyway, so what does it matter, right? Okay, so I'm going to demo the Send-To location stuff now, and when Tanya gets in here, maybe I'll make her introduce herself. We'll see. Okay. Thanks for being concerned, though, about my eye. Appreciate that. Okay, now you don't have to see me. So, all right, so can you guys see my screen, hopefully? Yeah? All right. So here, this is my virtual machine. I'm going to start off just in a good old-fashioned document library. The functionality that we're talking about today is called Send-To, and in previous versions of SharePoint, this has existed for at least, I think probably since 2007 at least. And it used to be in the little drop-down menu that was on each item. It said Send-To here, if you guys remember that. It doesn't exist in the drop-down menu anymore, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. They moved it up here to the ribbon. So if you select a single document in your library and go to the ribbon up here, that's where you're going to see the Send-To button. So this is what the focus is on today. I'll go ahead and, there we go. All right, so when you, in your document library, you're going to have 2 options in here, Send-To other location or create document workspace. This is really interesting right here, this create document workspace, because document workspace used to be a site template that existed before SharePoint 2013. In SharePoint 2013, they basically cleaned out a bunch of the extra like site templates that they thought were just kind of nobody needed. And document workspace is one of the ones they got rid of. So, but if you really, really want to create one, that would be how you would do it. You can still do it. Basically, it just creates an entire subsite around that one document that you have selected, and it puts it in a library in that subsite, and that way you could have a whole site revolving around that one document to have discussions and tasks and whatever needs to happen around it. But I think maybe they found that people weren't using that, so it got depreciated. But anyway, I'm not going to really go into that. Since it got depreciated, I don't expect it to be around too much longer. But there's your little hack for creating a document workspace subsite if you need to. Pretty cool? Maybe? Sorta? Okay. So this other location thing is the first thing that I'm going to focus on. So by default in a library, you have this other location box that comes up. So what you can do is you have to put the URL to another library that you want to send that document to. So that's a little tricky because that almost right there takes you up to sort of a power user type of level, because most end users don't necessarily know what a URL is and what the URL to a document library would be. And you just have to be able to paste it in there. It doesn't let you browse to it or anything. So that's what I'm going to do first, is I created another library and I just called it other library. And I'm going to go grab the URL to that thing. And also, you'll notice just a little tidbit. You'll notice in SharePoint 2013 that your URLs might look very, like they have a lot of weird characters in them and stuff like that. This one, what I did to get rid of just all these extra characters that they had in the URL to make it more simple like it was in previous versions. Do you guys remember whether it was a site feature or site collection feature? I think it's a site collection feature. It makes you think that you're looking at something that has to do with branding, but it really has to do with, it changes what the URL is. It's called, yeah, y'all help me out. It's the one that the little, good grief. Crickets chirping. Minimal download strategy, right there. So minimal download strategy is what's going to make your site so that it's like when you go to try and copy a hyperlink, it doesn't have all those weird, funky characters in it like it did in previous versions. Does that ring a bell? Anybody? No? Okay. All right. So just real quick, I'm going to go to the other library and grab the URL of it. That's what kind of on the path that I was going. Copy that. So I'm just copying the whole thing out of the address bar. And then I'm going to go back to my documents here. And then I can take this document that I want to send to another location. And again, I have to go to the ribbon, send to, and then paste it in there. So it's several clicks. I don't need this /forms/all items, so that's another part of it that makes it a little tricky to be able to use. You can actually give it a different name when you move it to this, copy it to this other location. And then this is really neat. It says prompt the author to send out updates when the document is checked in. That means when I'm working on this file in this documents library again, and I check it back in when I'm done, it's going to say, hey, you have a copy in this other library, or you have multiple copies in these other libraries. Do you want to update those two with your changes? And so it will prompt me. And on my virtual machine, I don't have email turned on, but if I wanted to, I could also create an alert that would let me know on this source document, that's the original document that you're sending, do I want to create an alert so that I'll be notified when people are changing the document? That way, even if somebody changes it and they don't necessarily check it out and check it in, then I can still get an alert, just a regular old SharePoint alert that they changed it, so I'll know to go in here maybe and send the updates out to the other copies. So you're about to copy this to this other location, okay, and then it copies it, and I'm done. So how do I know it went over there? So this one was called jury duty. So I'll go to my other library. And there it is. So you'll see a couple of interesting things. I'll show you in the source library first. I'm going to put these in my ribbon because it's driving me nuts flipping back and forth. There we go. And then, this is a publishing site, so I have to go change the way the navigation works in here. All right, this is kind of a brand new site collection that I created, by the way. That's why it's got all these default settings. All right, structural navigation there. Okay, so now I can see them. All right, so documents. This is the one that I sent, jury duty. And I can now, when I go to files and I see send to, look at this. It shows me I've got this little information thing tells me more information. Update the copies that exist in other libraries. And if you have it exist in multiple libraries, you'll see them all in a row. So for example, this one called conflict of interest, it exists in multiple, I copied it to multiple libraries. So I could do select all and then go update those. And then it say I'm about to copy it. So it takes the whole file and copies it over to the other locations where that file is. So why would you want to use this? So I'm going to kind of give an example, and you guys in the chat room and you guys in the room here with me, feel free to shout out any other kind of ideas you have. So the first thing is, like in the real world, and an example of how and why I've seen this used was we had an HR department that had their own just internal HR collab team, just a team site that they collaborated on files, and then they also had a like a publishing site that had like information about the HR department and like a library there for people in the company, just anybody to be able to go open certain documents and read them, like documents that they had made available to the whole company. So we were able to use the send to functionality to say, when someone was finished working on a file internally, and they wanted to just quickly get it out there to the other site. Could be in a completely other site collection too, by the way. They just did send to, and they sent it to that other library, and they sent the copy to the other library that way, and then they could keep it up from there. That way the people just in the general population of the company didn't necessarily see that sort of back-end library where people were working on things, and which had a whole bunch of other stuff in it, by the way. They just saw like this smaller subset of files in a different library that HR had chosen to show to the company. So just like in SharePoint, there are a million ways to do things, but that's one way to do that kind of thing. Any other feedback or questions or ways that you've seen people use this? Any of you?
I think the only thing I would add is that, you know, the way you were just talking about, like having like a master repository, it's just like a an easy authoring, publishing kind of system for those kinds of things, because not only can they not see it, they don't have to have permissions in that library or anything. So
Right.
it can go to a library that everybody has permissions to from some, you know, kind of authoring library where very few people have access.
Exactly. So, you know, in this kind of situation, you actually are going to have a common place that they all want to send stuff to from this library. So I'll show you how to do that as well. But real quick, I want to show you a couple of other little settings in here, like this one. I'm going to go to the View Properties screen on one of these files that's been sent over here using using the send to. This item is a copy of this, and it tells me exactly where the original is, and it says go to source item. It gives me a hyperlink to just directly link and just go open that source item, or I can unlink it. So I can say, hey, I want this to be separate. I don't want it to be connected anymore, and I can unlink the file so it's not part of it anymore. And then I can say manage copies. And now this is really the interface that I want to use from within the original. So I mean, it's going to let me, if I really want to, I could take this one file and send it out to other locations again and have it become the original. But I'm going to go to the manage copies item here over in the original item real quick. So I'm going to click close. And I'm going to go back to my original library. And Andrew, I'll get to your question in a second. Real quick, let me go to jury duty here. And manage copies. So this existing copies means do a quick update. And then manage copies is where I just want to see where they all are. And I'll go to this other one that I have multiple copies for. So I can see the different destinations, who's the last person that modify them. Ooh, copies that do not prompt for updates. That's going to be, I believe that's going to be when you do the unlink, but I'm going to test that and double check it. So Andrew said you can set it can go across site collections, but can this also be used to send the document to another farm? I'm going to demo the cross-site collections thing, Andrew, but I'm not sure about farm. Does anybody else know that off the top of their head?
It can be, but it's very tricky. You have to configure the farms to actually be able to communicate and trust each other to begin with. And there's a particular setting in central administration to be able to it's to show, or it allows the send to location to be on a different tenant.
Yeah, so that's what I'll address when we get to that part. But that checkbox, I believe, is, I wasn't sure if tenant meant site collection or farm. So we'll,
it's supposed to be site collection, but if you have the farms communicating together in a with federation and such, it can go to the other farm, but permissions. I mean, it's very intricate and pain in the butt.
It can be. It's definitely across web apps too, by the way, though, because that's what I'm doing my demo in. All right, so this item's a copy. I'm going to click unlink on my little conflict of interest. Because this item is a copy, it still may be receiving updates from its source. You should make sure that this item is removed from the sources list of items to update. Otherwise, this item may continue to receive updates. Are you sure you want to unlink this item? So now it's unlinked. Let me go back to my original and go to conflict of interest here and manage copies. and it says it's copies that prompt for updates and copies that do not prompt for updates, and it's basically telling me that this one's still going to get updates. And it lets me do new copy. So that's with new copy, I'm going to be prompted with that same exact interface that I had when I first did the send to. So it's going to say, okay, do new copy where, and you give it a location, and it sends it to another place. All right. So the next thing I want to show you, though, especially for this, like, kind of think about this idea that I was talking about with HR, is they always have a specific place that they want to send things to from this library, so you can hard code that in there just at the library level if you want to. So I can go to library settings up here, and I can go to my advanced settings, and I have custom send to destination. So it gives me one box that I can put a single location in here to have a custom send to. All right, now, again, I'm kind of starting at the very easiest settings here and working our way up to having some more complexity with multiple locations and stuff like that. So don't worry, this is not as far as you can go. All right, so then I would have my destination name. Again, I need to go get my URL. So I'm going to go just open this other library in a new tab and grab my URL, copy, and then I'm going to say other library. I'm going to say like public or like something like that. I'm going to call it something like that so they'll know what I'm referring to. All right, so there's my URL, and then click OK. Okay, so now when I'm on my documents and I go to just some file in here, send to, I just click public library, and I still get prompted whether I want to send updates out. I don't know why they have it default to no. You would think you would want to have that be yes, and then click OK. So now that's huge, because guess what? The end user did not need to know how to get a URL and put a URL in that box and configure a URL, right? That's awesome for user adoption to make them not have to do that. Now, what about content types, you're wondering? So let's see how that works with content types. So this other library is a library that I created just from scratch, just using the document library template, and then do not do a single thing to it. I didn't add any extra content types, or I just it's got the default content type in there. And then documents, I've actually added another content type called company policy, and I've got a site column in here called department that is part of that content type. So how is this going to work with when something's got columns of metadata associated with it, and how's it going to move over? So let's see. I'm going to take, so what I did was, and you saw me, I took conflict of interest and I copied it over to the other library. But guess what? The other library doesn't have the other content type, so therefore it doesn't have the other columns. So you're just going to see the one file there, and the only content type you get is just the default content type. So because the other library I sent it to doesn't have any kind of content types in it, it just gets the default. So I'm going to go to my other library, which is like my public library, the one that I want to send stuff to, and I'll go in here and go to the library settings, advanced settings, and allow management of content types. Click OK. And now I can see, again, it's just got that one content type. I'm going to add from existing content types, and that's my company policy is the one that I used in the other library. And so now documents, the default, and company policy at least is in there, so now it's got that department column. It came with the content type. Okay, so I'll do one more step, and I'll go to this default view up here and just modify the view so that I can see the content type and the department to see if that's going to come across. All right, so go to documents, and I'll take one of these other, like staff discipline. I haven't sent that one over yet. It's part of the company policy. It's got company policy content type, and it's got marketing as the department. So now I'm going to go, I keep wanting to do the drop-down box. Send to public library. Yes. Click OK. Now let's see what happens with staff discipline. Other library. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Woohoo. So I'm a nerd, I know. Okay, so if your target library already has the content type that you're using in the first library, then look at that. It comes with all the metadata and everything. These other ones that I sent across before, they might have been the company policy content type that they didn't have. This library didn't have the content type yet. They didn't get it, but let me see if it will. When I switch it over, let's see what happens. So I'll go to Edit Properties of Conflict of Interest and flip it over to Company Policy. And oh no, see, it didn't come. The metadata that existed before I sent the file over did not come along with it, I don't think. Let me see. Yeah, no, since I sent it over here before I added the content type, it didn't go, the metadata didn't go with it. So know that ahead of time. Let's see. Andrew says, did you say what permission level is needed to send, document, manage copies, unlink copies, etc.? Probably edit at the library level for the library that you're. Let's see. I'm not sure. I could test that. I know that you don't have to have access to the place you're sending stuff to, but let me double check that. That's a great question, though. Okay, so what I'm going to do is for my test here, I'm going to do just a really simple test, just still staying in the constraints of this one test site that I'm doing before I get to the whole send to other locations thing. And I'm going to go into this other library, and let's see. I'm going to go to Advanced and Stop Inheriting Permissions, and I'm going to make sure that, like, I'm going to log in as a different, let's see what user I'm going to log in. I'm going to log in as Joelle, just for fun, in my little test VM here. I'm going to make sure she doesn't have access to this library, and I'm going to make sure that, and then I'm going to go try and send a file to it. Okay? Is that kind of what you wanted to know? Just let me know. All right, so I'm going to remove all those. Hopefully it's not going to remove me from it. So I'll make sure that I'm system account, so I don't really, I'm logged in a system account here, so just in my VM, so it doesn't really matter if I show here or not. And so I'm going to make sure that Joelle's little account on my site has permission to the site. So I'm going to say, and I'm just going to put her in here explicitly, Joelle. And so she has access. I would put her in a group. I hate it when it does that. I just wanted to put her in this. Just want to put her just by herself, not in a group. There. We'll just put her as read and go take her out of whatever group it put her in. It's so annoying. Okay. There. Now, so she has read access to the site, but she doesn't have access to that other library. So I'm going to log in as her, and I'm going to try and send a file to that other library. So oh, I hope I added this to my DNet, my post file. Let me see. I think I did. Okay, there's Joelle. Site contents. She can still see the other library, though. So she shouldn't see it if she doesn't have access to it, right? Okay, let me double check that. I don't want her to have access to it. Okay. It has unique permissions. I'm just going to put Laura in here. Now, why would Joelle be able to see a library that she doesn't have access to? She could be a site collection administrator, maybe. Let's see. Oh, okay. She saw it and she clicked on it, and it just gives her an error that says this this site hasn't been shared with you. So she actually saw the other library, and that kind of annoys me because you would think that when you don't have access to something that you wouldn't see it. Isn't that your experience with just SharePoint in general? Is that if you don't have access to something, you don't see it in the list of site contents? Like, am I crazy here? Anyway, so she can't get to this other library, so she's going to go to Documents, and she's going to go do a send to. So all she has is read here. Oh, I keep doing that. There we go. Send to public library. You do not have edit permissions on this document, so the system will be unable to prompt to send out updates when the document is checked in. Do you want to proceed with the copy? Oh, so that's pretty cool. So she can send a copy over, but it can't prompt her to send out updates because it assumes that she can't make updates to the thing in the first place. All right. So copy, it's waiting for user confirmation, and click OK. And then it takes her back. It takes her back to access denied. But the question is, did it let her send the file over? So what file was I copying? Let me see. I was copying jury duty. So let's just go see if it copied. Oh, that might have been a bad example because I might have already copied that one. Let's see. Oh, we got to go and log in as me. Sorry. Oh, yeah. Let me use a different one that someone hasn't already copied over. I'm not very good at this whole demo thing, you know. All right. Risk management. That one has not already been copied. Let's see if it actually copies, even though it gives her that access denied error. Okay. Okay. All right. And then let's see if it got copied. No, it didn't. Interesting. So it tells her that it's okay to copy it, and then it does not copy it over. It doesn't appear. Let me go back to it again. Nope. So let me go to risk management and see if it says anything about like having other copies. Nope, it doesn't. It doesn't have like any indication that she did that. That's good, actually. I kind of like the fact that if somebody only has read access, that they can't go messing around and send it to other places. That makes sense to me. So let's go do something a little different. Let's go give her contribute permissions, and then I'm going to move on to the whole being able to send to different locations and stuff like that after we test this permissions thing. Unless you guys can think of any other permissions questions that might be pertinent. All right, so now Joelle has contributed to this whole site. So now I'm going to be logged in as her. And I'm going to go to Documents. I can still see the other library, but it's not showing in my quick launch. That's interesting. Okay, Staff Discipline. We'll try that one. Keep doing that. Send to Public Library. Sure. Okay. Okay. And then I get access denied. So it didn't give me an error message that time. So let's see what happens. Staff Discipline was the one I copied over, and it did not copy it. It did not copy it when she did not have access to that other library at all. Good to know. All right. We're going to try that in kind of some different scenarios too. All right, so far I've demonstrated how to use the send to functionality to send a single copy to just, let me go back to the original, to just a single, just one place that you type in manually. Then I showed how to add a single other location here to do send to. And then even when you add a single other location, you still have other location as an option, which means that besides public library, they can just go manually type in somewhere else as well if they like. And how to go see and manage existing copies. kind of another way of going about this whole having two different copies of something in different libraries in SharePoint is that I wanted to address is also the link to a document concept. So if you don't want to have entire multiple copies of an entire file in different places, and if someone has access to the file that you're linking to, you can use this concept of linking to a document. That way, you can still have sort of a placeholder that's in like a library where it might belong or in a folder where it might belong, but you don't have to have multiple copies of that same file everywhere. So to use that functionality, we would do what's called a link. That is actually an out-of-the-box content type. So when I go to Library Settings, so right now with this link to thing, I'm diverging away from the send to just for a few minutes just to show you another option. So this would save disk space. So I'm going to add from existing content types, and I'm going to do link to a document. And I'm going to add that to my library. So now I have this other library where stuff exists, and I want to go link to a specific document over in this library. So say I like religious holidays, and I think that I like the place that I've stored it, but there's some other location in SharePoint that people keep going looking for this file. So instead of having copies floating around, I'm just going to go to this other location, and I'm going to put a link to it there. So people will at least be able to find it even if it exists somewhere else. So I think I called it religious holidays, right? Yeah. So go link to. All right, so now it's just got a little different URL there. Kind of neat, huh? So this is an actual file called religious holidays, and this is a link to a file called religious holidays that exists. And it's actually, it's not going to take me to the other library. It's just going to immediately open that file, even though it exists somewhere else. Does that make sense? Anybody have questions about that or one versus the other? Have you guys in my little room here, have y'all seen people use one versus the other or pros and cons? You have any input there? Alrighty, they're working hard. Okay, so now the next concept is to be able to have multiple locations. So I have this other site, this other web app here that I've actually set up some multiple locations to be able to send stuff to. So I have, I can go to a document. This is just, I'll just go to my policies document, and I'll go to my party policy, and again my send to, and look at this. I've got multiple locations I can send it to. So I'm going to choose archive, and then are you sure you want to move this document to archive? So what was that? So now the next concept is to be able to have multiple locations. I think one of you is playing your video on your, I can hear it through your microphone. Okay, I think it was Stephen, you're not muted, so maybe it's you, or I don't know, maybe it's me. Okay, so this is actually something that we set up. You have to have access, you have to have central admin access to get to this, but with this one, I'm actually, with this send to, I'm actually moving it. So that is a setting I've done when I created this location, was I said I want it to actually move files to an archive when people choose that. So that's what the end user interface is going to look like. And it says the file has been sent to the archive location successfully. Here's the URL to find or request access to this document in its final location. So guess what? With this one, I do not have to have access to wherever the file is being moved to. I have set up completely different site collection, where it's called doc, which is just a site collection based off like the document repository, whatever that template is. And I've set that as the location to send stuff to as an archive. Let's see, Deborah says, so if you go to resend the conflict of interest document, will it then copy over the conflict of interest document with the metadata? Oh, that's a great question. So let me go back and try and do that real quick. So conflict of interest is the one that was company policy, and then I added the content type to the other library, and then conflict of interest didn't bring the metadata. Then when I go back to conflict of interest, let's do that. So let's go send to, and then just send the update to existing copies. And let's see what happens. You got the metadata. Very cool. Yeah, I like that. It worked. Okay, so when I did this archive, and I have stuff set up, like I have a completely different site collection. You could have that site collection have its own database if you expect it to be really big, and you can have an entire library just for archiving stuff too. And you can let people manually archive things, or you can archive things using like a retention policy. So that's where we get into, like, we had a whole other power hour about the content organizer and how to do content organizer rules. So now kind of we've crossed more into that. So what I was showing you with just some of the out-of-the-box send to locations, but now we're getting more into like where we're talking about information management policies and content organizer and stuff like that, get into the realm of that. So this is when you start getting beyond just wanting to have a single other location to send stuff to, that's when you need to go to be able to go to central admin. So from central administration, I go to general application settings down here, and it's called configure send to connections. So general application settings, configure send to connections. Okay, so even for those of you who are not server admins, it's good to know that this is here, that this is something that you can go request of your server admin to do for you. So we were a couple of us were talking about this before I did the presentation about, maybe not wanting to do too much stuff in central admin because our audience for this power hour is more business users and, business solutions without being a server admin. But I like to empower you guys. I like the business users to know what exists in central admin that might help you and help user adoption and be able to help you get your solutions to do what you need them to do. And so configure send to connections is one of those things that's buried in here that is very useful. All right, so this is something you configure per web app. So this other web app I had that I was on called test.contoso.com, it does not have any rule. Just new connection is the default thing that it has in here. It doesn't have any connections set up. This is the checkbox we were talking about earlier. Allow sites to send to connections outside their tenancy. Choose whether tenants on this farm can send content to other tenants on this farm. So it does say on this farm. So it makes me think that, like Kevin's right, there's probably a way to do it across farm, but it's going to involve something very tricky, or who knows, PowerShell or something like that, to be able to finagle to be able to do something like that. So that's not an out-of-the-box functionality. He's shaking his head. Exactly. All right, so I'm going to go back to my change web app. I'm going to go to my this is my RTM. This is where this one is, RTM, my web app. And this is where I have some policies that I've set up. So when I create a new connection, I'll just show you a blank one. It says, what is the display name? What do you want it to say? So in the little drop-down box of the send to, what do you want it to say there? What's the URL where we're sending it to? And then do we want to allow manual submission? So that's interesting. So what is manual submission? Manual submission is what I did just a second ago. I went to a specific file in a library and manually clicked send to and chose that option to send the file to the archive. An end user would manually do that. You can disallow that. So when you disallow manual submission, we're not even talking about using the send to drop-down box anymore. We're talking about like using a content organizer rules, information management policies, or something like that to automatically have things sent according to a certain date, etc. So we might have time to get into some of that, but I think we actually are going to have a whole separate power hour about information management policies. So So that's what allow manual submission is. And then look at this. This is kind of cool. Do I want to just copy the file? Do I want to move it? Or do I want to move it and leave a link? So that way, if I move it, I can leave a link and say, well, here's this. Basically, it would just have a little hyperlink where the file was. And if you click on it, it's going to try and take you to that archive location it got moved to. And then you'll probably get like an access request prompt because you might not necessarily have access to that other site collection. Any questions so far? Y'all feel free to shout it out in use the little Q&A app in Google Hangout to ask me questions. So I don't want to copy, move, or move and leave a link. So I'm going to do a new one. I'm going to call it archive and link just to test this out. And this is real interesting, the send to URL. So this is a tricky part. So I need to know where I'm sending it to. If I'm sending it to just a document library, I can put the document library, just URL here. If I have what's called the content organizer rules that we did in the other Power Hour, the content organizer rule is what gives me this URL. So when you go, this is a feature on your site that you enable, and when you go into your content organizer settings, it provides you the URL here. But for this specific little one that I'm going to create, I'm just going to put the direct URL to another library in here, and I'm just going to say I'm going to make this other library my library that I'm going to go to. And we'll see if that works. It might have to be a content organizer. We'll see. We're testing it out. All right, move and leave a link. And then this file was moved to archive, and a link was left behind. All right, and then not sure what add connection and remove connection is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. There we go. See, that's what I was just mentioning. URL is not a valid routing destination. So when I'm putting URLs here in my custom send to, I can't. It's not going to let me just put a direct link to another library. I have to use the content organizer. And that's the question that I was just asking because, of course, it doesn't say that here. It has an example of some big cryptic thing that you're not going to necessarily know what it means if you've never done this before. But I'm here to say it is definitely not a direct hyperlink to another library. So what we would have to do is if I want this library to be a place that people can send to, I have to go turn on the content organizer. So I have to go to Site Settings and Site Features. And this is where we're overlapping into Joelle's presentation that she did already. And activate the content organizer. And that's where you have to have, you have to be a site admin to be able to do something like that. And then when I go to Site Settings, I'm going to have some new settings in here. Look at that. Under Site Administration, now I have Content Organizer settings. So, require users to use the organizer when submitting new content to libraries with one or more organizer rules, whatever. Allow rules to specify another site as a target location. And then it gives me, like, this is kind of all these options here are what's going to happen once files start arriving in this library, because you don't want it to just be the Wild West and stuff just piles up for years and years, so yeah, we've seen that happen. So this is where it creates subfolders after a target location has too many items. So you can say, yeah, do that. Use SharePoint versioning or append unique characters and have just a bunch of different separate files in there. I like versioning. It's nice and neat. So if people submit the same exact file to archive, it will just put it as a new version. And then save the original audit log and properties of submitted content. And then just some stuff about being able to send emails. And look at this. Here it is. See, this is the URL we needed. So we had to go to Site Features, turn on the Content Organizer, and then go to the Content Organizer settings, and there's the URL we need. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I didn't change many of the settings in there, but now I'm going to go to my other library, and I'm going to say I want people to be able to send stuff here. So I need to go to, I already got the URL, and let's see, what am I missing? Configure send to, archive and link. So instead of putting other library like that, I just put it like that. And then, Joelle, refresh my memory. What do I need to do something on that specific library to be able to say that that's where it's going to go? So I did set this up for this other library archive and this other stuff, but that's the only library in the site. Okay. Oh, it's the content organizer rules, isn't it?
I think so.
Okay. I'm going to click OK. So once I configured send to, and this was just a site setting. So I'm going to see, before I do anything else to determine where things go, like which library things go to, I'm going to go ahead and try and do a send to that new location that I just set up. So I'm going to go pick project system workflow screenshots, and I'm going to go try and send that to my new archive and link. See what happens. Are you sure you want to move this document to archive and link? A link will be created to the destination document. This file has been sent to the archive and link location successfully. Oh, there you go. That's where it went. Here's the URL. So it automatically created a file. When I turn on the content organizer on my site where the other library was, it automatically created a library in that site called drop-off library. And that's where stuff is going to end up by default. So I actually have to do something special if I want it to go to a specific library. Deborah says, that's cool. Will it update automatically then when the original is updated? Well, so far all I've done is a move. So let's do the copy, and let's try that. So let's see if any of my rules that I've already created do a copy, and then we'll go create one. I've got 8 minutes. So that one, policies, does a copy. So this one sends it to my customer subsite here, and it does a copy. So I'm going to go ahead and send one to policies. So this is some policies in a library in SharePoint, but I also have a send to location called policies, which maybe I'm going to make that like that's where archived policies go or something like that. We'll just pretend that's what it's doing. So I'm going to say travel and tips, and I'm going to do the policies rule, send to location, and that's going to do a copy. Are you sure you want to copy this document to policies? Okay. All right, this file has been sent to the policies location to find or request access to the document in its final location. Okay, I'm going to copy that to my clipboard just in case. Click OK. All right, I'm going to take that link that it just gave me. I'm just going to open it in a new window and see where it goes. All right, so basically it just gives me a link just to directly open the file. So I'm not going to do that right now, though. All right. Okay, so travel and tips. Let's go see what happens. So I'll go check the file out. And I'm going to pretend like I'm editing something. I'll just go edit like a property or something. Name of it. Click Save. And then I'm going to get prompted when I check it back in, I think. Nope, because I don't have it. It's not prompting me. Click OK. And send to, manage copies. Nope, it doesn't have any indication. So let's go see what the send to looks like. Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't give you any ability to do that, to answer your question. It doesn't give you any ability to, once you've sent it to one of these send to locations, to do anything with the copy, even if you've just copied it and not moved it. So it doesn't even give you any indication that you have ever sent it to that location. Interesting. So if you want to have a record of where the copies are of something, don't use the custom send to up here in Central Administration. But it does have logging. So you'll notice, so one of the things that we had over in our other, the site collection where we enabled the content organizer settings, is that it's going to have save the original audit log and properties of the submitted content. So it is preserving information about the stuff that gets sent there, but it's not necessarily going to write back to give any information back to the other site. Yeah. So, and then the next thing you do is, like, this drop-off library is the one that automatically got created when I turned on the content organizer rule. So then content organizer rules are what we would use to determine what library. If we wanted stuff to end up in a different library besides the drop-off one, we have to determine where they're going to go. So then this is where, again, Joelle covered this. We're going to call this go to other. And then that's where we could say how, well, you know, what's the rule? This is just logic. What's the rule to determine the things that are going to go to the other library versus the things that are going to go somewhere else? So if it is of the, let's just say, document content type. Now this would be a good reason to have if we had, if I had used a content type repository, a global content type that existed in all of my site collections, then I would be like that one that was called company policy, then that would exist over in this site collection. So that'd be a good reason to think that when you're planning out your content types to have things exist in a content type hub so that they can be used across site collections, like in situations like this. So I'm just going to say if something is of the just generic document content type. But if I know that it has other names in other sites, I can actually map those to each other. So I can create one called like company policy over here and say it does have other names, and then I could actually type in what the names are of that content type in other places if I have not put a content type hub in place. So that's pretty cool. That makes up for it. And then I can say if it's of the document content type, then where do I want to put it? And then this is where I can browse to my other library. And blah, blah, blah. Click OK. All right, that one's called other library. So now when I go to policies, and I'm going to take site requests and send to, I'm going to go to, which one was it? Archive and link, right? Submission is pending. This document is pending submission and requires attention from the submitter or a site administrator. Click the link below to access the document and finish the submission. Ooh, interesting. So that's going to be over in my, I got to stop in a minute, over here in my drop-off library. So there it is, site requests. What does it need me to do, Joelle? Is there something that I didn't? I should have just clicked the link. Okay, let me just click the link next time. Let me try that again. Archive and link, blah, blah, blah. Click the link. It doesn't actually let me click it. I got 1 minute. And it just opens the file up. Well, that's not very useful. All right, so it's just I didn't set up my drop-off library rules correctly, so that's all it is. But they ended up here, so they didn't get like dropped off into nowhere. I just need to go back. The next thing I would do would be to go to my content organizer settings and rules and figure out what I did wrong in here in my rule that would make it not automatically move. So maybe it had a different content type other than document. That could have been what it was. Alrighty. I'll wrap it up. We might do something on information policies next week. But thanks everybody for coming. And again, Power Hour every Wednesday at 11 Central. And we will see you later. Bye.